the one with the exclamation point.
What a jam by Grant Hill!
There's Scott for three.
Kenny Smith hitting the three.
Big time plays here by Steve Smith.
It is with great pleasure that I welcome you to another season of Open Court, that rousing hour-long conversation among NBA greats, and what a lineup we have for this show today. Can I start with the guy who is now marking 16 years at TNT, Kenny the Jet Smith.
16, like a sweet 16.
16.
Where's my gifts? I want a sweet 16 party.
Sorry.
MTV style.
Get his chair out of here, will you? Next we have the most accurate three-point shooter in the history of the NBA, Steve Kerr.
Thank you.
And just a notch above Steph Curry right now, who's trying to do that, but yeah, you are.
Oh, thank you. No ovation. I mean, Kenny gets.
Yeah.
Go shooter. Way to go shoot. Way to go shoot. Way to go shoot.
7 for 10 though. Good point.
Recent retiree, the aging seven-time All-Star, Grant Hill. Hey, you retired, the aging Grant
Feels
Hill.
good to be a rookie.
It's wonderful to have you with us.
Welcome to the other side.
The Michigan State legend, 14 seasons in the NBA, Steve Smith.
Thanks, Ernie.
Hall of Fame in the year 2000, one of the bad boys, and a guy who is extraordinarily ticked that there isn't more Detroit memorabilia in the studio. Playing with a real edge today, bad boy Isaiah Thomas.
Absolutely. Wait a minute.
What?
We said
These are just the intros, but go ahead.
We said this was a show about the 90s, right?
Well, you're giving away the first topic, but go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, well, all right. Well, I'll wait for the first topic. But yeah, I don't see, 90 represented. We just should have said it's 91 on.
Okay. Would you like to sit next to Kenny and be bitter about stuff?
No, I'm going to be the angry black man.
That's my role. Okay, next to Zeke. Next to Zeke, we have the man who was born on New Year's Eve, and it's been a party ever since. Brent Barry. You were born on New Year's Eve, right? And every year we mark that.
Every year.
They do that around the world. They drop a big ball and
Brent's party.
I have no problem getting people together for that day.
Yeah, certainly. And rounding out the panel, more than 1,200 three-pointers made in his career. 3D, Dennis Scott.
All right.
Happy to be here. Happy to be here.
So anyway, as Isaiah was mentioning, we're talking about the 90s. And when you talk about, I guess if you're going to have the nominees for Team of the 90s, the nominees are the Chicago Bulls.
Yes.
So let's start there. That's the team of the 90s. There were some really good squads in the 90s.
Yeah.
Weren't there?
Hey, look.
Yeah, but we have a guy, Steve Kerr, who was part of a three-peat. Out of 2 three-peats by the Bulls in the 90s. So obviously they're the team. Before I talk
They broken up by?
By Michael Jordan going to play baseball.
No. Hey, he played basketball that year. Ask Dennis.
Yes,
They knocked him out.
I know.
Okay, all right.
I know. Before we talk about what made that team so special, and obviously Steve has in-depth knowledge of that, what was it like to play the Bulls in those days? Isaiah, you're a newcomer. You and Grant will have the first crack at this because we haven't had you here. But what was it like to play the Bulls in those years?
When they finally turned the corner and became champions, it wasn't so much the Bulls, it was their mindset. I thought when Phil Jackson came and replaced Doug Collins, I thought he totally changed the mindset, the mental makeup of the team. They became a stronger team mentally. They became tougher-minded. And Jordan started believing more in his teammates. During the 80s, it was all about Mike. How many points he could score. Could he lead the team totally by himself? And once Phil got to the team, he started sharing the ball a little bit more. They went to the triangle. And they were strong enough mentally to get to their 4th and 5th option on every play. Before that, they could only get to their 1st and 2nd option, but at the end, they were getting to their 4th and 5th option, and he trusted and bought in to his teammates as opposed to him trying to do it himself. And once they became that type of team, you know, they became the dynasty.
You know, as you said, when they finally got there, and your Pistons, one of the guys they had to get past, did the Jordan rules really work?
It was more propaganda than it was it really worked. I mean, if you go back and you look, Jordan, I think his career average against the Pistons was 32.9 or something like that. However, we made him take a lot of shots, and our idea was to make sure that he worked for every shot that he took, because we knew that he didn't trust his teammates. And under that system that they had, we could always find where he was going to be. Once they went to the triangle, Phil was able to move him to the top, to the wing, to the post. So you never knew where he was going to be out on the floor, so it made your double teams a lot harder.
When they were winning those first of the three-peat, the 91, 92, 93, you're in college. And then in 95, you're the co-rookie of the year. And then you're in the league, and then you're watching firsthand this team you watched on TV. And what was that like, Grant?
Well, I'll tell you what, Jordan, he trusted his teammates then. You know, obviously, they were obviously a great team. You got up for that game. That was a game that you look forward to. Being a fellow Detroit alum and the history that was there was always an excitement in the Palace when they would come to town. For me,
but y'all blew it. I mean, we used to beat them all the time. I mean, we beat them like 18 or 20 straight times, and then they turned around and beat you like 24,
we beat them
26.
once. We beat them once.
You beat them once out of what?
We beat them once. It was on national television, too, so that was good. And for me personally, I didn't match up with Jordan. I wanted to guard Jordan, but Dumars, you know, he was the Jordan stopper on our team. And I was matched up with Pippen. And that was always, you know, a great matchup. I enjoyed that. He was kind of the guy that you're trying to get to. But they beat us. I mean, you know, it was fun to compete, but it wasn't always fun to result. And
welcome to the Turner family. So, it's like your first comment is about how you got beat. No. Straight, kid.
Hey, did you lose your confidence?
As a Piston, it wasn't about competing. It was about winning.
No, it was. But we weren't that good. I mean, to be honest, we weren't that good.
Well, how'd you keep your confidence going through all that early in your career? Because a lot of guys will lose their confidence losing like that early in their career.
It was tough. I mean, my second year, we won 45 games. The third year, I think 54. But, you know, you're climbing. You're still trying to get better. You're trying to get – and for me, coming after, you know, a great legend in Isaiah, that was the standard. And so you always kind of were trying to get to that point. And certainly we didn't get to that point. But I think it was the uniform change. We went from that blue and red to the teal. And you kind of lose your edge when you're playing, you know, wearing teal. That was
And
not
we should
fun.
point out there's a reason that Grant went to Detroit. What were you, the second pick in the draft?
Third pick.
Third pick.
Third pick, yes.
It was the mess that Isaiah left the organization.
That's what it was.
I wasn't
Like all
around
of a
then. I don't
sudden,
remember.
They're picking in the top three. Why is that?
Yeah, well, I think Isaiah got hurt that
That's
year
right.
before.
Hurt.
And,
No, actually, it was the Grand Hill sweepstakes. I didn't get hurt that year. They actually set me because they didn't want to win, because they knew if I would have played, then we'd have won more games. So it's kind of like, well, we're going to let Lindsey Hunter take over, and we're going to start Lindsey. And
So, Steve, tell me about that team and about the makeup of that team and about the drive on that Chicago team.
Well, I got there the second part of the three-peat. So the original kind of push came when the Bulls beat Isaiah's Pistons, which they had been trying to do for years and couldn't get over the hump. And I think Isaiah touched on it. I mean, Phil Jackson's presence on the sidelines, the installment of the triangle, helping kind of to balance the offense and to keep Jordan moving around. I think that was all huge.
I think, Steve, to add to that, you know, we all talk about the triangle offensively, but for wing guys, I think Michael's and Scotty's commitment defensively to really take the 1, the 2, the 3 out of the game, because there was no let up from them defensively. And I think they got a lot of that from Detroit. Defensively, their mindset was, we can go out and shut down every wing guy.
That's what I was going to really ask you about, Steve, that I think is the most impressive thing, because a lot of people climb to Mount Everest and then they make their way back down pretty quick. They acclimated themselves at the highest peak of competitiveness in the NBA, and being able to sustain that for 3 championships, then missing a couple, and then your time there in the second run, to be able to sustain that on the physical level, but more importantly on the mental level, I think is the most impressive part of that. And you were in that mix the second time around, and we're learning about that drive. What's the secret there? I mean, what is the secret sauce for that maintenance and that sort of sustainability?
You mean other than Michael Jordan?
Well, yeah.
No,
because
I mean,
teams win. It has to
right.
be collective. It has to be collective.
I think the leadership of Phil Jackson and Michael and Scotty, they were really a team together. And I think stepping away from the game for a couple of years actually led to that second three-peat. You know, people sometimes will say to me, gosh, if Michael hadn't gone to play baseball, you guys would have won like 7 in a row.
Kenny shaking his head, Steve. Kenny shaking
No way. No, it wouldn't have happened. And not because of him, but no, I mean, I think, and Kenny can attest to this, and you know, Isaiah, when you win a couple years in a row and you're playing deep into June and every game is so emotional and you're exerting so much energy to keep trying to do it, it's almost impossible.
That was probably the most impressive thing, because there's times in the NBA where regular season games become feeling like playoff games. They had that feeling, you know, I would say 60 games when they came into town, where it felt like a playoff atmosphere. So that was the mental approach I thought was incredible. But the crazy thing about it, doing those runs, because of the type of team that the Rockets had and we had at that time, we never played the Bulls obviously in the playoffs because we were in the West. Right. But in the regular season, because of what Hakeem was able to do, we never really struggled against what they could do, because I think between Winnington and Cartwright and Longley, they had so much trouble with Hakeem that they didn't play the wings as tight. Right. Yeah. They didn't guard everyone as different. Yeah. It was a total different mindset. So when I watched the Chicago Bulls, I was like, why can't they get it to the wing? I was like, oh, they don't have that big 34 that we have.
Right. Yeah. Olajuwon spins inside along the baseline. Olajuwon takes it to the middle. And did he ever?
Pip and Michael would slag off the wings. Vernon would get threes. Robert Horry would get threes. And we had some success in the regular season. Now, you know, I know they were a different team. You guys were different in the playoffs. But we never kind of feared that. And so when we won our first championship, we really felt, we would say, we would have beat the Bulls. We used to think that.
You talk about the sphere factor, but was it intimidating playing that team, 3D?
Well, it was different, very similar to what Kenny said. When I was going into the game with Shaq and Penny. So they was too busy trying to slow them guys down, and that's what opened up shots for me. And I kind of want to go back to Steve. Did you feel any added pressure going back to the first three where Mike didn't want to pass the basketball? How much pressure did Mike put on you, along with Olajuwon putting on you guys, that when they got double teamed, you had to make those shots?
Well, it was funny because Hakeem was the exact opposite. If you miss one, he would say, you're never going to miss 2 shots in a row, Kenny. You're never going to miss. So, like, he was the exact opposite. I never felt the pressure. He even got to the point he said, he's like, I can't remember all the plays. So when they double team and it's coming from Kenny's man, the play should just be called Kenny. So I know to look for him. So he's like, so we started running the play, and they're like, Kenny. And he just looked at me and threw it to me out wide open.
I wonder who put that in his ear, Kenny. I wonder who put that in his ear.
On the back of the play, and there was a little conversation.
So was every play Kenny?
Yeah. It would be the person who was getting double team. So we played certain teams, and he saw Vernon. That would be instead of calling out a number. So he'd know where the double teams come.
See, if you did Smith, there's too many guys.
Exactly.
I thought your championship run, you know, we talk a lot about Olajuwon, but I thought, you know, Cassell, yourself, and Maxwell doing that run that you guys had was awesome.
You know what? That's an excellent point, and we want to tackle that when we come back on Open Court, because the Bulls are the team of the 90s, but there are several other good squads worth talking about, and we'll talk about the Rockets and others when we come back.
I always say the NBA is a copycat league. When they were winning, everyone's like, oh, we got to have 3 guards. We got to have 3 guards to get it done. We got caught in that era when Houston brought 3 guards in. We were copying what they were doing, and that's how we got together on the West Coast.
Houston Rockets 94-95 and San Antonio in 99 as we talk about champions of the 90s and teams of the 90s. And a point of clarification before we go any further, we're going to pick up where you are questioning Kenny. The Pistons lost 19 straight to Chicago.
Some of that was
Seven of those you wear. 12 you
okay.
wear.
So you had seven, Zeke.
You had seven, Zeke.
Yeah.
What happened, Zeke?
No, this is what I'm saying. They weren't playing me. We was in the Grand Hill sweepstakes.
Welcome back to
Grand Hill sweepstakes.
Welcome back to revisionist history here on Open Court. Okay, so what did you want to know from Kenny about the Rockets?
No, I was just going to say they had a very, I think throughout history, your backcourt was very underrated because I thought the three guards that they had in terms of Smith, Cassell, and Maxwell was very similar to myself, Dumars, and Vinny. And, you know, you had Elijah Wan in the post, but, you know, when you talk about the three-point shot, you know, the line had just come in, and they were the first team, I thought, who really started utilizing the three-point line. And, you know, Cassell was a nightmare for everybody, just like Vinnie Johnson coming in off the bench. I thought Sam coming in was a nightmare for everybody.
If you ask Wizards players, he still is.
He was that wild. That's my man. But he was a wild card.
Yeah.
No, but I thought
we obviously weren't as explosive as that backcourt. But what everyone, I thought, had the misconception of is that we were just a three-point shooting team. Because really, when myself, Vernon, and Sam came into the league, our first 4 or 5 years, none of us was known as three-point shooters. We all learned as keep them out the lane, they're penetrators, pull up jump shots at most, but not three-point shooters. And then that offense kind of just evolved. We just started talking basketball. No, don't cut this time. You stay, move over, stay out. And then all of a sudden it became an offense more than making an offense into it. I always say the NBA is a copycat league. When they were winning, everyone's like, oh, we got to have three guards. We got to have three guards to get it done. We got caught in that era when Houston brought three guards in. And then all of a sudden when Michael was winning, they were like, oh, you need a big guard. You need the Grand Hill sweepstakes. Yeah. You know, and when Magic was winning, oh, you got to have a 6'8" point guard. It was like
Steve
9,
Smith.
6'8".
That's Steve Smith coming in. Right.
It's just a copycat league. We were copying what they were doing, and that's how we got together on the West Coast.
And then the team that copied you guys immediately after that was the Seattle Supersonics when George Karl decided to use GP and do a lot of trapping, but the stretch for having Sam Perkins out there and starting to spread out the floor a little bit, it became the idea that you're going to have to get a shooting big out there that's going to open up some of the floor, especially in the absence of a power center, even though it was Kemp not having a post-up power center. Then it became the stretch four league, which from that time on, quite frankly, that's the way the game has been played.
Also, I mean, Orlando before Sam.
But
3D, I thought your team in Orlando was this close. I mean, with you, Shaq, and Penny.
Yeah.
I mean, I
remember when Shaq, dynasty.
Hold on.
Yeah, I remember when Shaq came in.
They said Shaq wasn't worth $100 million.
Yeah,
okay.
Time out.
Since you went there, that's how close we were.
Yeah, I mean, you guys, I mean, when Penny Hardaway came into the league, I just thought that with he, yourself, and Shaq.
Nick Anderson.
And Nick Anderson, I mean, that was like, oh, my God, what are you going to do with that? And because you guys were right there, and then the year that Jordan came back, you guys beat Chicago. Them. And then something happened that next summer that I don't know how you guys fell off, but Chicago, I didn't know if Chicago could ever overtake you guys.
No, I'll tell you exactly what happened.
Yeah, what happened?
Michael was embarrassed during that series. Remember, Nick Anderson stole the ball. He had come back for about a month and just tried to, after almost 2 years off. Right. And one game he'd have 50, and the next game he'd get the ball stolen. It was kind of a weird.
His rhythm went there.
I mean, you said it's so casual.
Like one game
he just happened. It's Michael, right?
Remember one game he just had 50, and then he would fall off.
I'm just being honest. He had 55 in the Garden. That came back. This is like 2 weeks after he comes back from almost 2 years off. But it wasn't, you know, he'd do that every game.
What did he fall off to?
40. But I think my original point was he was embarrassed by that series when you guys beat us. And that's the summer he went back. Remember, he was filming the Space Jam movie. And I don't know if any of you guys work out there. So he built a set, right? He built
and on the Warner set, they built a basketball court for him, and he brought all the guys who were in LA to come out and play. And so I went out there, and I had a good day against him. Came back the next day.
The worst thing we ever did, because why did we go to that set and help him get ready? Right? Why did we do that? Because I went there like for a week. I was talking about the set. I flew to L.A., got my own hotel just to go to the set and play for a week to help him get ready to win another championship.
Well, actually, I'm glad y'all did that, because had y'all not did that, we probably wouldn't be here having this show, because the game wouldn't have exploded the way it exploded. You know, this global game that we have right now, I don't know if it would be that without him.
I'll tell you, most of the East was happy that Orlando kind of imploded.
Yeah, what happened to y'all
that Shaq
summer?
left and went west,
just that simple.
Everybody on the East Coast was happy.
They put an article out in Orlando paper.
Was that the summer that he left?
That's the summer he left. Shaq bolted, and they said Shaq's not worth $1 million. Jerry West, okay, he got rid of all the Lakers but 2 players. They got rid of all the players but 2 and said, Shaq, come on out here, and the rest is history.
Wow.
Yeah. When we played you guys in the finals, we swept them. But when we at halftime of game 1, Clyde Drexler, he looks at me and goes, "Oh, these guys will be here for the next 10 years."
Yeah.
He said they'll be here for that. But
That's
whatever we got to do, if we don't get them now, we're not going to get them.
Yeah.
And everyone had that feeling. It was just there was no matchup that you could really have, because most teams have small guards. Penny was a big guy who actually played small at the same time. And then, you know, Dennis is 6'8", and they move him to 2-3. Then Nick Anderson 6'6", physical. He played inside out. It was an impossible matchup for a team. No one had what you guys had.
So breaking in Horrors kind of gave us that veteran stability rebound.
Nobody had what you guys had. No one had what you guys had. But those 5 players were arguably the best.
You could say that about any team Shaquille's on. Nobody has what they had.
Hey, tail end of the 90s, we got our first glimpse of a team that would win a string of championships, the San Antonio Spurs. Not string of consecutive championships, but a level of greatness, a standard of greatness that would continue for years and years. Did you see that coming early, back when you won it in 99?
You know, I didn't know. I mean, I was living right. I went right from Chicago to San Antonio and I barely played on that 99 team, but, you know, was on that championship.
But the ring doesn't say that, does it?
No, it doesn't.
No, okay.
It doesn't mention minutes played. But at the beginning of the season, I didn't think we were that good. I think we started out maybe 6-8, and people were talking about firing Greg Popovich. The fans were all over him, and that was the strike-shortened year. And we went on this run that was just incredible, but it was all based on the defense of Tim and David. It was kind of more back to, you know, the mid-'80s when you guys, or late '80s when you guys were beating people up. The Spurs just squeezed everybody to death. I mean, our front line was so good, and the strategy, you know, Greg Popovich was ahead of his time, denying corner threes, really funneling offense into certain areas. Our defense was incredible, and that run, I think, sort of caught everybody off guard. But that was also after Michael had retired, and I don't think anybody knew what to expect in the NBA that year.
I know for me and Pop had our battles because, you know, as wing guys, you really had to play in that system. I think Steve and Brent can understand. You threw it in, and you had about this much room to go to a spot. It was all about spacing. And for me, I struggled because I was always used to having the basketball posting up, where you couldn't post up as a wing guy. You had to have room for Tim and David. But the system worked perfectly. I mean, it also had guys where Tim and David knew where to throw the basketball out of a double team. You threw the spots. You really didn't have to throw to a person that's open. You kind of threw the spots.
If I had a choice between them struggling, you and that point in your career, you would.
But you know the one thing about Kenny,
you would have struggled at that point.
Yeah, but
it wasn't your 3rd year in the league.
But it was still a point where you thought, you know, for me to have advantage, I needed to post up. I wasn't going past nobody off the dribble.
Okay.
I would say, EJ, I had played 9 years in the NBA. I had played for Bill Fitch. I had played for Pat Riley. I had played for Paul Westphal, who was a great offensive coach, his years in Phoenix, made things very easy. I had played for Nate McMillan. And as good as those coaches are, and a lot of those guys have incredible records and tenures in the league, that I learned so much in 2 months' time being in San Antonio with Pop about the game that I just never really conceptualized as to how to make this game easier to play so that your team has a chance every night to win games. I mean, it was really that simple. We could talk X and O's and playbook and go 80 plays deep and all the wrinkles and all those sort of things, but just to bring it to the surface, or really dig to the core of it, is the fact that let's try to make this as efficient and easy as possible so that we take the hardest decisions out of the game and make it easy for you to play. And that was really eye-opening, having played so many games already in my career.
We're talking about the teams of the 90s here on Open Court. More after this.
They left the bench, although there's 7 and 9, 10 seconds remaining. The Pistons just left.
Everyone could be a Piston in the league. Every coach could coach like Chuck Daly, but the Pistons themselves, we couldn't act and be like Pistons.
There is a violent knockdown by Lambert, and Bird just smacked him. Now Isaiah Thomas is coming over. And so all of the wonderful, marvelous Pistons come over. They have been called a dirty ball club, and I can see why. This is a typical disgusting display by Rodman, Lambert, and Isaiah Thomas. And they told me I shouldn't say bad things about Isaiah, and I say, why not?
1990 champions, and you made it back-to-back, the Detroit Pistons. The bad boys. And how much did you latch on to this this persona of the bad boys to, I don't know, did you feel like you intimidated teams?
Well, we thought we intimidated teams mentally. Even though the propaganda out there was about our physicality, we came into the game knowing that and thinking that we were more mentally tougher than the opponent. So we thought that we would just mentally wear teams down, and then they would unravel, and then they would say it was because of our physicality. But if you go back and you really look, we got punched a lot. Lambert was getting punched in the face. I don't think...
He never had it coming.
No, well...
Why you keep saying this? So you saying y'all didn't instigate anything?
I'm not. It's propaganda. No, it was real, man. Y'all were bad boys, man. There was no problem. Listen, the first time I played, I wasn't even in the big 80s mix. But this is the first time I played the Detroit Pistons. This guy I look up to, Joe Dumars I look up to. I had 2 shots in a row. Timeouts called. Joe Dumars is walking by, Mr. Gentleman, nice guy of the league, right into my gut. And I'm like, did you see what he just did?
Yeah.
And so he looks back, like, okay, you hit 2 in a row, you won't hit. That's real. That's not propaganda.
Okay.
What other, Steve Kerr never did that.
Was that mental or physical intimidation?
It was both. It was both. You don't hit it. It's a timeout on the play, honey. You're walking to one bench, the other guy's walking, and then he gives you a shot because he knows no one's paying attention.
I actually did that to you one time, but I don't think you felt it.
Okay, so here's the question. Did you make your 3rd shot?
I don't think so.
He didn't take it. He didn't even take it.
I was so flabbergasted that he actually did that because I was such a big fan of this. And then I'm like, Joe Dumars is the nice guy of the bad boys. And he's the one who hit you. So I just lost it. I think for about 4 or 5 minutes.
How much was Coach Daly just a part of making sure that you guys maintained that? Like, how much did Coach talk about that with you guys?
Again, we never talked about our physical edge, our physical advantage. We always came into the game just saying we were mentally tougher than the opponent. And if you go back and you listen to any of our interviews, that's what we always talked about, our mental stamina, our mental toughness. Now, the media talked about the physical toughness, and the players talked about the physical toughness, but we believed that we could take a game plan off the blackboard and execute it for 48 minutes better than any other team in the league. And that's what we tried to do. That was our approach to the game.
How'd y'all keep a young Dennis Rodman under control compared to the later Dennis Rodman with the dress and the changing the color of the hair and all that?
See,
Y'all had the young Dennis Rodman.
I thought Chicago turned Rodman out. I thought you guys turned him out because, you know, we had such a great structure in terms of interior, of professionalism, the way we carried ourselves. We wore suit and ties to the games. You know, everything that we did, we upgraded our travel, hotels, and everything.
Y'all were the first to do private jets.
Yeah, so we always thought that, you know, we wanted everything to be great for our players. Rodman fit into that structure, and he needed structure. And I thought when he got to Chicago, I mean, y'all were the party team. Y'all were drinking. Before I knew it, he had rented buses. He was going to Vegas before the game, gambling and everything. I'm like, what happened to Rodman?
I dragged him straight down. I did. I dragged him down. He always wanted to go back to the hotel, and I'd keep, come on, Dennis, let's go.
I mean, you had him hanging out with Madonna and everything. I was like, what happened to Rodman? That's what all of us asked. What happened to Rodman? I mean, now you got him in North Korea.
I got a question for you, Isaiah. And I feel like we can probably ask anything we want here, right?
Okay.
If you had it to do over again, would you shake hands with the Bulls?
Absolutely. Now, and the reason why I would is because looking back in terms of what has happened, you know, had I had a chance to do it all over again, we should have took the higher road. Now,
when did that come to you? How many years later? Or was it that night I should have shook hands?
I would say we resisted. I would say, and even myself, I resisted for about a good 6 to 8 months. We had dethroned the Celtics. We had dethroned the Lakers. And we thought that we deserved a little bit of respect as a champion. Everyone and every team could play and act like the Pistons and adopt our philosophy except the Pistons. And before the Bulls swept us in '91, I remember clearly Jordan and Phil Jackson and everyone, because they swept us in Detroit. And they went on a day and a half tirade about how we were bad for the game, how we were bad people, how Lambeer was a thug, how this guy was, you know, in our town. And they were getting ready to win. They were up 3-0. And then they had this press conference just totally disrespecting us as champions. They went on to sweep us, and the decision was made, you know, just to walk off. And
when was that decision made?
It was made on the bench.
Before the game started, or as the game was winding down?
As the game was winding down.
I was about to say before the game started.
No, I'm just saying. We're not shaking hands with these guys.
It's swell. Ready to lose, man. We ain't shaking their hand. Man, what they say, we ain't shaking their hand.
Pistons wasting no time in getting out of here. They left the bench, although there's 7 and 9/10 seconds remaining. The Pistons just left. The Detroit Pistons heading back to the locker room. Their season has concluded, while the Chicago Bulls advance to the NBA championship round.
Everyone could be a Piston in the league. Every coach could coach like Chuck Daly, but the Pistons themselves, we couldn't act and be like Pistons, to the point that they even had to change their uniforms and try to change the culture and everything else.
I'm glad you've moved on from it, though. That's good that you've got
it. Kenny, they were respected, correct?
No, the Pistons were respected, but it was kind of like you were the first rap culture that embraced it.
Yeah.
And said, no, I'm cool with that, and actually I'm going to use that. And I think you were the first. And so for everyone, it was a shock, because we all grew up in the Dr. J era, the gentlemen of the game. And you guys have said, no, we look like gentlemen, but we ain't gentlemen.
We're going to smack you.
But I will say,
but you look at Lambeer. Lambeer, you know, Lambeer came from a very privileged background.
Right, exactly.
And so you can't say that Lambeer.
But he embraced
being
everything.
Called a thug,
right, he embraced it.
Which was, you know, personally and emotionally was tough for him. We never was thugs. That's what I'm saying.
bad boys.
So they took y'all's physical play and stuff. So if you come across the lane and Rick Mahorn hit you, he say, don't come back in here no more.
Well, those were the rules back then. If you remember in the 80s, your coach taught, right? If somebody's cutting through the lane, you could impede the progress of the player. And so we took all the rules and we used them.
Well, you can impede, you can't break their jaw.
Well, you just took impede to a new level.
Down he goes, Isaiah. We got a whistle. Isaiah's eyes cut badly. Oh, he took a blow to the head.
I got hit upside the head. Lambeer was getting punched in the face.
I agree with you totally.
Dennis Rodman in this league has never thrown a punch.
No,
the only one on our team who threw punches, I threw punches out of retaliation because people were hitting me. Wait, I never fought the guards. Every time I came down the hole, a big guy thought that he had the right to hit me. And I was like, that's not working.
I almost got what you said. But, you know what I'm saying? You went right back to player mode.
No.
But no, I agree with you.
I'm not taking a hit.
Think about this. This is what I'm saying. You were the guys, the first guys to wear on your chest.
And Mahorn threw a punch.
No, but you wear it on your chest, put it on your headband. I'm bad.
We put
when
defense.
You put that, when you put
defense,
but you guys had the bad boy logos and everything. When you wear that, people are gonna look at it. Not saying faultly or right. They're gonna look at it and go, it's kind of like the Muhammad Ali. I'm big and I'm bad.
Yeah.
And I'm bigger and badder than you. And I'm gonna actually wear it, saying it. I'm bigger and badder than you.
And Kenny, I agree. But I think also being in the inside, I went to every practice, every game, being in college. What I can attest to him and Joe. I've never seen a professional team, I get a chance to see both sides coming in, where they in suits. I mean, they're coming out talking to the public. Isaiah came and Joe came around the Detroit areas.
I'm not disagreeing.
I'm just saying, though, I think that was the one part that was never mentioned about the Pistons. For a
they
kid,
were fighting in San Antonio. They weren't just playing. Hey, going around in Detroit.
For a city kid from Detroit to see a professional player not scared to come to the neighborhood, not scared to come to Persian High School and talk to me, that's the part that was a big impression on me.
Grant, what was it like to jump into that as a professional with that kind of a reputation the team had to become a Piston?
Well, we were bad boys, but we were bad in a different way. We just weren't that good. But, I mean, obviously when they were winning, I was in high school in Virginia and was a fan. And certainly, I mean, it felt like you guys embraced that whole bad boy persona. But as I went there later on and played, I got to know Isaiah, who was always extremely helpful to me as a young, top player on a team. Obviously played with Joe, Lambeer, all those guys. And there was a level of professionalism. But it was tough. I mean, you had big shoes to fill, and we weren't that good. Obviously I was trying to go that way and trying to hopefully get there, but we just didn't have the team or the personnel to be a championship-level team.
A little-known fact, Bad Boys was not the original nickname of that team either. Impede Boys was.
I thought it was the propaganda boys.
Never caught on.
Roll off the tongue.
We're gonna be back to talk about some teams that couldn't quite make it over the hump in the 90s. The best of that bunch when we come back.
I thought Utah, they had everything that it took to win a championship. I thought they had the system. I thought they had the players, the toughness, the defensive-minded and everything. But I always felt like Malone really was the weak link.
More Open Court episodes available at the click of a mouse on NBA.com.
In your face, hit Barkley for three, unbelievable! They just methodically tear you apart.
And Malone is the trailer, and he gets the basket. Stockton behind Malone. Stockton to Malone underneath left side.
Malone from Stockton. He led it beautifully.
The Suns and the Jazz and the Blazers, for that matter, among the teams who had a crack at it, made the NBA Finals in the 90s, couldn't seal the deal. Who was the best of those teams that couldn't get over the hump?
It's probably Utah when you look at their numbers.
Yeah, Utah's second
60,
most regular season wins, second
60,
most playoff wins in the 90s.
Yeah.
But they ran
I thought the
the
Phoenix Suns were tougher than them.
Well,
tougher or better?
The way we're saying betterment, that regular season, Utah always had 62 wins, though.
They had 62 wins, but I always thought, you know, when we played Phoenix, they had another gear. Like, they could explode, and they can run off 10, 14 points in a row, where I always felt Utah, you felt like you were still in the game. They really weren't going to blow you out. You always stayed within 8. But, you know, those Suns, if you know, with Charles and KJ and Marley and Danny Ainge, and they just start shooting threes and running up and dunk. I thought they were such an explosive team that they should have probably been to the finals more. And it was just luck of the draw, because we really had their number and Seattle had ours. And we never played Seattle, and they would always beat Seattle and play us. So if we had to play on that other side or vice versa, I think it might have been a different time.
But, you know, I thought Utah, you know, going back to that team, I thought they had everything that it took to win a championship. I thought they had the system. I thought they had the players, the toughness, the defensive-minded and everything. But I always felt like Malone really was the weak link, because he wasn't a good foul shooter. Had he been a good foul shooter, they beat Chicago. They would have beat Chicago.
They would have beat us one year.
I think they'd have beat you.
Yeah.
And
weak link is the term you want to use there?
Well,
or they.
Yeah, no.
Or his inability to hit free throws.
No. That's a weak link. You know, because at the end of the game, when you're playing at that level, you come down to the last 30 seconds or the last minute of the game. If that guy can't make foul shots, then he's the weak link. He's the guy that you're fouling. He's the guy that you want to put on the line. You're not fouling Stockton.
Right.
You're not putting him on the line. You're not letting him take the shot. Everything is going to Malone. I thought Malone's inability to make free throws was
the difference
that stopped them
with
from
them
winning the championship.
Was also that, because in a game 5, that's when it was a 5-game series, down the stretch, minute to go, I think Carl missed a couple free throws. Great player.
He was a 74% shooter all time.
All up, but he got better.
But
he definitely got better.
You're talking about when he missed.
But I thought more importantly for us when we used to play him is that we say, with 2 minutes to go in each quarter, they don't have a guy that can just break you down off the dribble. The pick and roll was so prevalent in their thing that it actually hindered Stockton sometimes, because sometimes he'd have you, because he was the guy I thought who could break you off the dribble.
Yeah.
And the pick and roll helped because it slowed the offense down, and you could get help. You could get sometimes I thought it helped us as a defense that they ran the pick and roll, which is probably their biggest weapon through NBA history.
Hey, 3D, we've talked about what could have been, and these guys have all said, boy, if that Orlando bunch stays together, look out. But other teams in the East who knew the frustration of trying to get by Chicago, teams like Indiana, teams like New York in the 90s.
Ooh. I think I'm going to start with the Indiana team, because the Davis twins, even though they weren't brothers, but we called them the Davis twins. You had Derek McKee at 6'11", playing the small forward, power forward. Then they brought in Byron Scott, who was a veteran shooting threes. And Brian Fleming.
The Flying Dutchman.
And I was saving that for last, because that was Shaq's nightmare, because he would come to the huddle and say, what are we going to do with him? He's 7'4", he can shoot the top of the key, he had a jump hook. He wasn't very
athletic. That was his toughest guy. He said that like about 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Talking about Rick Smith.
Rick Smith, yeah. That's what he's telling me. He said, I could not deal with this guy because he could shoot with either hand, he could run the floor pretty good, and he could bang with Shaq. Shaq said he wasn't super strong, but he was just heavy. And that was one team that every time he went to battle the Pacers, you knew you had to take care of the basketball. And everyone knew I couldn't rebound, so I had to face guard and get in front of Derek McKee and say, look, I don't care where the ball goes. As long as you don't get it, I'm good. I'm staying in the game.
Did I miss it, or did you not say Reggie Miller was also on that team? He's an integral part of that Pacer bunch.
I was starting inside out.
Okay, all right.
Because that was a battle that Nick Anderson had to deal with every night. See, I had to wrestle with Derek McKee. Nick Anderson had to chase Reggie Miller around 39 screens every night.
How about the Knicks of that time? One of the teams that you knocked out to win your.
The reason why basketball is the way it is now is because of that team in the Knicks, because they tried to do the bad boy. Pat Riley went into the bad boy mentality of we're going to be mentally strong and physically strong.
So
They were
hand
more
check rule.
physically strong than
Instead of-
mentally strong.
Right. So they were.
Let's get that straight. Let's get that straight. Let's get that straight.
I want to hear you expand on that one.
Yeah, well, I definitely can expand on that.
I mean, you think about Oakley, Mason, Ewing. You know, those guys, when you went through the lane against the Knicks, Anthony Bonner was on their team. They was all just bodybuilders.
Yeah, and it was acceptable then. The league bought it, right?
Yeah, they bought into
everybody was like, oh, the Knicks are all right.
They bought into it. You know why? Because they didn't change their name to the bad boys. To the bad boys. You know what I mean? They didn't wear it on their chest. You can do it, you just can't wear it on your chest. That's the thing. But I thought the Knicks teams were good. I never, they had Patrick Ewing was a great player.
I thought their problem, they only had one gear, and that was slow, into pass.
And slower.
And grind it. They never sped you up, and that's one of the things that why we were able to beat them, because Penny would hit that gear, Nick would hit that gear, and we get out and run. Shaq get to run the floor, the young Shaquille O'Neal. They played double teaming them, and I get wide open.
They were good.
Yeah.
They were really good, but they didn't have that, what he just said to me as well, and that hurt Patrick as well. But I think Patrick could have played in a fast system. He could have played in a slow system. He could have played anywhere. And he never got to play but one way, and I thought that hurt his chances.